Number 1. Indonesia, the land of 1,000 islands. You ever notice how everyone loves to pretend they're adventurous, until they realize adventure means a 22-hour flight, no Starbucks, and maybe a toilet situation that doesn't flush? Yeah, let's talk about Indonesia, a place that's either on your dream list or in your I've heard of it but can't spell it folder. Here's the thing, most of us think we know the world because we've scrolled through 3 National Geographic reels and watched a Netflix travel doc while half asleep. But Indonesia? It doesn't just slap you with beauty. It backhands you with chaos, mystery, and more islands than your commitment issues can count. Let's start with the basics you didn't bother Googling. Indonesia isn't just a country. It's a 1.9 million square kilometer sprawl of, how is this even one place? It stretches across 2 continents, sits on both hemispheres, and casually holds 13,500 to 17,500 islands, give or take, depending on who's counting and who forgot their GPS. If Earth had a sandbox mode, this is it. Now, let's hit that nerve. You think your commute sucks? Try living in a country where your neighbor could be 300 islands away and speaks a different language. That's not exaggeration. That's Indonesia, a linguistic jungle with over 700 active languages. Yeah, English is cool, but try negotiating a coconut with 12 dialects before lunch. And speaking of contradictions, here's a mind twister. 87% of Indonesia is Muslim, and yet it's home to Borobudur, the world's largest Buddhist temple. Let that simmer. Imagine the US having a giant vegan monument in the middle of Texas barbecue country. That's the kind of beautiful paradox Indonesia wears like cologne. Also, quick sidebar, its flag is almost identical to Monaco's. Same red and white bands. So either someone copied someone, or minimalism just got lazy. Either way, blink twice and you're saluting the wrong nation. But let's talk people. This country isn't just crowded, it's brimming. As of February 2025, 285.7 million people are crammed into a space that feels like a postcard exploded. It's the 4th most populous country, sitting right behind China, India, and the land of fast food and slow healthcare, the US. Still not impressed? Fine. Here's your soul-flinching truth. You've spent more time memorizing fictional wizard spells than learning anything about the world's largest archipelagic country. Indonesia's been here, flexing temples, volcanoes, tribes, and coastlines, while you were busy binge-watching shows about people cheating on islands instead of learning about actual islands. And let's talk coastline. 55,000 kilometers. That's the 2nd longest in the world. So while you're reposting "Take me to the ocean" quotes, Indonesia is the ocean. It's not a beach day. It's a beach lifetime. Oh, and the Dani tribe? Yeah, they used to cut off women's fingers to mourn loved ones. That's not a metaphor. That's a real ritual. Meanwhile, we panic when someone unfollows us on Instagram. You think you live in a diverse place? Indonesia's over there making the rest of us look like we're playing with Duplo blocks while they're solving a 4D Rubik's Cube blindfolded. So now the question is, are you still pretending Bali is all Indonesia is? Or are you ready to dig deeper? Comment 1 if you're done underestimating this jaw-dropping, contradiction-filled, mind-bending beast of a nation. Just don't blame us when you fall in love with it, and realize your geography teacher lied to you. 2. Cultural notes when visiting Indonesia. Let's be honest, most people treat travel like swiping right on a culture they don't understand, hoping it's exotic enough to look good on Instagram but tame enough not to challenge their comfort zone. And then they land in Indonesia, and suddenly realize it's not Bali beach bars and smoothie bowls 24/7. Nope. It's a country where culture isn't background music, it's the entire damn soundtrack. And if you show up acting like the main character in someone else's story, don't be shocked when the locals start giving you the "this one's lost" look. Now here's your slap-in-the-face truth. If you think wearing a bikini to a mosque-adjacent street is just your freedom of expression, you're not bold, you're blind. Indonesia isn't here to cater to your Western default settings. It's 87% Muslim, deeply rooted in tradition, and spoiler alert, your PDA isn't edgy here, it's just awkward. In fact, if you're into hugging, kissing, or holding hands in public, congrats, you've just made everyone around you extremely uncomfortable. And possibly ruined someone's lunch. This isn't about shaming affection. It's about reading the room, or in this case, the entire nation. Clothing? Think less Coachella, and more respect doesn't cost fabric. Aceh, parts of Java, where something that covers more than your self-esteem. Because in these parts, short shorts don't say liberated, they say didn't do their homework. Now here's the kicker. Indonesia is one of the friendliest places on earth if you show basic respect. You don't need to convert, memorize the Quran, or walk around apologizing for your passport. You just need to observe. Watch how locals speak, eat, move, then do 80% of that and maybe don't order alcohol at a restaurant that clearly says no alcohol. Speaking of which, don't roll your eyes when they won't serve booze. This isn't a dry county, it's cultural code. Indonesians value balance, self-control, and you not acting like a freshman at their first party. And the food? It's eaten with both hands, slowly, intentionally, without texting in between bites. Radical, I know. You ever wonder why people in Indonesia seem so grounded while half the world's out here in therapy screaming about boundaries? Maybe it's because they actually practice respect, not just post about it. Comment 2 if you're tired of playing tourist and ready to actually show up like someone worth welcoming. 3. Indonesian women, beautiful, loyal, but single. Let's just say the quiet part out loud. Everyone wants loyal, gorgeous, emotionally stable women. But no one's ready for what that actually costs. You want ride or die energy, but you still flinch at commitment like it's a surprise medical bill. So yeah, let's talk about Indonesian women, because they're not playing the same game as the swipe left generation. Here's the part no one says but everyone notices. Indonesian women are stunning. Like slow down your scroll, beautiful. 9th in Asia for beauty, officially. But let's be honest, when you meet one in real life, it doesn't feel like a ranking. It feels like your algorithm glitched and delivered someone who looks like a real-life filter. And then it hits you, they're not just beautiful. They're serene. While you're still figuring out how to spell boundaries, they've already set theirs, in stone. They don't chase, they attract. They don't beg, they walk. And if that makes you nervous, good. That's your emotional maturity being audited in real time. Now here's a fact that should make your jaw dislocate. 31% of Indonesian women aged 18 to 30 are still single. Let that sink in. That's 55 million women. That's not a dating pool, that's a nation. And no, it's not because no one wants them. It's because they don't settle. Romantic desperation isn't part of their culture, dignity is. See, in the West, we chase vibes. In Indonesia, they check values. You can have abs, money, a verified account, doesn't matter. If you're disrespectful, clingy, or casually condescending, you're out. No dramatic exits, no TikTok callouts, just silence so permanent it could be listed as a death certificate. And yes, they're open to foreign love. Bali, Lombok, all the places where tourism meets curiosity. It's happening. But before you start packing your cologne and compliments, here's the catch. They don't want a fantasy. They want a partner who understands their culture, their faith, and their family. So if you think just being myself is enough, ask yourself this. Have you met yourself lately? Want to marry one? Hope you're good with religious conversion, because interfaith marriage isn't allowed under Indonesian law. One of you will need to fully commit, not just emotionally, but spiritually. Still sound romantic? And here's what no influencer will tell you. You don't win them over with money or smooth talk. You impress them with consistency, humility, and actual intentions. Not WYD texts at midnight, but how's your mom? In the morning. Real, grown-up connection. The stuff dating apps never trained you for. You ever wonder why the most attractive women are also the hardest to get? Maybe because they're not trying to be gotten, they're just waiting for someone who deserves the getting. Comment 3, if you're finally ready to upgrade from chasing attention to earning respect. But fair warning, this isn't a rom-com. It's a reality check. And Indonesia doesn't hand out second editions. 4. A nation on fire. You ever complain about your life being chaotic, like my inbox is a mess, or Mercury's in retrograde again? Yeah, try living in a country that literally explodes on a regular basis. Welcome to Indonesia, where nature doesn't just throw tantrums, it drops volcanic mic bombs. Here's a stat to ruin your next geography flex. Indonesia has 130 active volcanoes. That's not a typo. That's 1/3 of all the world's volcanoes crammed into one archipelago, like it's playing natural disaster bingo. Still think your apartment's leaky faucet is a crisis? Let's get painfully real for a second. You booked a trip for tropical paradise, and forgot to check if your hotel sits on a boiling cauldron of Earth's rage. You're out here chasing sunsets and smoothie bowls while the island underneath you is one tectonic hiccup away from turning into a Nat Geo documentary. Tambora in 1815? That eruption was so powerful it literally deleted summer from the planet. Europe froze. Crops failed. People starved. All because one mountain in Indonesia said, "I'm feeling emotional." And Krakatoa in 1883? That one screamed so loud it was heard 2,600 kilometers away. That's like yelling in Houston and someone in San Diego calling the cops. Now fast forward to today. As of May 2025, there have been 9 eruptions already this year. 9. And it's not even halfway through the calendar. Meanwhile, most people panic when their phone drops below 20%. Still want to hike that volcano for the gram? Listen, I'm not saying don't go. Indonesia is stunning. It's wild, beautiful, and spiritually untamed. But you're not walking through a travel ad, you're walking through the Ring of Fire, and that's not a catchy lyric. That's literal geography, baby. The earth is still baking, bubbling, reshaping itself under your feet, and it doesn't care about your yoga retreat schedule. So here's your gourmet tip wrapped in sarcasm. If you're gonna visit, don't just pack sunscreen and vibes. Pack a damn evacuation plan. Offline maps. Emergency contacts. A fully charged phone and maybe a little respect for the land that survived things your Wi-Fi dependent life couldn't imagine. You ever wonder why people from volcanic zones are so calm, so grounded? Maybe it's because they've accepted the truth. You can't control the eruption. You can only control how prepared you are when it happens. Comment 4 if volcanoes fascinate you, and you're brave enough to respect the land, not just photograph it. 5. Top tourist destinations. Let's get one thing straight. Most people don't travel to find themselves. They travel to find Wi-Fi with a view. You don't want adventure. You want air-conditioned danger. You want authentic culture, as long as it comes with a smoothie bowl and optional mosquito nets. And that's why so many people fly to Bali thinking they're about to experience Indonesia, when really, they're just paying $12 for the same iced latte they ghosted back home. But here's the part that stings. If Bali is the only thing you know about Indonesia, then you've been sold the appetizer and skipped the feast. This country is a buffet of mind-blowing landscapes and cultural uppercuts, and most of y'all are still stuck posting the same beach photo filtered through a VSCO preset called Spiritual Awakening. Now let's break the spell. Bali is stunning, no doubt. It's the cultural pulse of Indonesia, full of temples, artisans, and beaches that look photoshopped in real life. But it's also crowded, influencer-infested, and let's be honest, more yoga retreat than local reality. It's less eat, pray, love, and more pose, post, leave. You came for enlightenment, but mostly you just upgraded your Instagram grid. Still, it's magical if you shut up and actually look. Wake up before 10, talk to a local, don't film everything, and you might realize why the Balinese don't need therapy. They've got rituals older than your entire bloodline. But Bali's just the opening act. Ever heard of Lake Toba? No? That's because your travel bucket list was written by an algorithm, not a geologist. Lake Toba was formed by one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history. Not your history. Earth's. Now it's a vast, tranquil crater lake that feels like nature's apology letter for everything else it's destroyed. You go there to unlearn burnout. To be bored in the best possible way. To finally exhale without checking if someone liked your story. And then there's Mount Bromo. Want to feel something real? Drag yourself out of bed at 3 a.m., hike through volcanic dust with freezing fingers, and stand at the summit while the sky bleeds orange and gold around you. It's cold. It's smoky. It smells like the earth is exhaling. You're uncomfortable, tired, half regretting it, and that's how you know it's worth it. Because unlike most things in your life, this isn't curated. It's chaos you can't control, and beauty you didn't earn. But that's the thing about Indonesia. It doesn't beg you to love it. It just is, fierce, quiet, explosive, sacred, and if you're not paying attention, it'll pass you by while you're too busy waiting in line for overpriced gelato. Comment 5 if you're done playing tourist and ready to see something that doesn't exist in guidebooks, only in moments that actually matter. 6. A tiny island that shaped US history. You ever feel like history class skipped the good parts? Like, we spent hours memorizing who crossed what river in a powdered wig. But nobody told us the entire fate of the United States started with a tiny sweaty island that smells like nutmeg? No really, New York exists because of Run Island, a speck in Indonesia barely big enough for a decent soccer field. In 1664, the Dutch traded it to the British for New Amsterdam, which the Brits immediately renamed to something sexier, New York. So yes, Manhattan was literally swapped for a tropical spice shack. Imagine trading Bitcoin for Beanie Babies. Same energy. Here's your flinch moment. That wasn't just a trade, it was a cosmic miscalculation. Because that nutmeg island? It was the jewel of the spice trade. Back then, nutmeg wasn't just for fancy eggnog. It was medicinal, magical, and worth more than gold. But now, most people think nutmeg is just what Starbucks dusts over your seasonal anxiety. And yet, this blink-and-you'll-miss-it island rerouted history. Without that trade, there's a real chance the US as we know it might have never existed. No Wall Street. No Yankees. No TikTok girls doing dances in Times Square. Let that hurt a little. Now let's talk about another curveball you didn't see coming. Barack Obama, yes, the actual US president, spent his childhood in Jakarta. He wasn't always giving speeches in polished suits. He was a barefoot kid running around Southeast Asia, learning humility, not headlines. They called him Barry. Yeah, that Barry. So while you were crying over finals in middle school, Barry was navigating street markets in a developing country. Perspective check, anyone? And because we love cultural zingers, let's talk Yago. It's an Indonesian term for men who are bold, unbothered, and a little too smooth with the ladies. It literally means rooster, because of course it does. In Indonesian slang, JFK and Bill Clinton? Certified Yagos. Bold, charming, sometimes morally allergic, but undeniably magnetic. It's not praise. It's not judgment. It's a mirror. You ever wonder why confidence gets mistaken for character? Why charm gets more applause than accountability? Indonesia already labeled it. And they did it centuries before your dating coach on TikTok. Comment 6 if this blew your mind. And if you're ready to admit that maybe, just maybe, history was way messier, funnier, and more accidentally brilliant than anyone dared to tell you. 7. Fascinating facts. You ever look at a country and realize you've been sleeping on it harder than your unpaid parking tickets? That's Indonesia. The average person still thinks it's all temples, beaches, and maybe a Komodo dragon or two. Cute. But beneath that coconut-scented stereotype, this place is an industrial, technological, gold-digging beast, and you've been too distracted by Bali beach reels to notice. Let's hurt your pride a little. While you're out here struggling to find signal in your overpriced apartment, Indonesia, a country spread across 17,000 islands, launched its own domestic satellite system in 1976. Let me say that again for the people still resetting their routers. First developing country to have its own satellite. It's called Palapa, and it connected 6,000 islands before your grandparents figured out how to set the VCR clock. But sure, let's keep pretending Indonesia's still catching up. Now here's a stat you didn't know you needed. Graberg Mine, located in West Papua, Indonesia, is the largest gold mine on the planet. Not one of the largest. The largest. That thing's sitting on enough wealth to fund your startup idea, your retirement plan, and probably fix your emotional damage, if gold could buy therapy. And get this, it was discovered by accident. Like, oops, stumbled onto $40 billion kind of accident. Meanwhile, you can't even find your AirPods. Still think Indonesia's not built different? Let's talk food. Because we know that's what you really care about. Indomie, yes, the instant noodle pack you lived off during college, is basically national treasure status in Indonesia. And to flex even harder, they created the world's biggest instant noodle pack, clocking in at a casual 700 grams. That's not a snack. That's a life choice. That's a hunger panic button with seasoning. And for the cherry on top of this industrial sundae, palm oil. Indonesia pumps out over 40 million tons of it annually. Along with Malaysia, they feed the entire planet's obsession with processed snacks, cosmetics, and anything that comes in plastic and shame. Palm oil's in your shampoo, your cookies, your lipstick. It's basically the clingy X of the global supply chain. Everywhere, kind of toxic, but impossible to quit. Here's the kicker. While the rest of the world's screaming about innovation, Indonesia's been out here quietly doing the thing. Building, mining, launching satellites, feeding you, and stacking quiet WS, while you assumed they were still figuring out electricity. Brutal, right? You ever wonder why we underestimate countries that don't shout the loudest? Maybe because we equate loud with advanced and quiet with behind. But the truth is, Indonesia isn't behind, you're just late to the realization. Comment 7 if your jaw's on the floor and your ego's somewhere under that 700-gram noodle pack. Indonesia didn't just surprise you, it just gave your worldview a full-blown software update. 8. A high-risk aviation industry. You ever book a flight and get that quiet voice in your head whispering, what if this is the one? Yeah. Now imagine that voice isn't paranoia, it's a statistical heads-up. Welcome to the darker side of Indonesia's aviation story. And buckle up, because this ride's got turbulence. Let's start where most stories don't, with the fall, not the rise. Because while most people remember the tragedies, Lion Air in 2018, Sriwijaya Air in 2021, almost no one talks about the fact that Indonesia wasn't always the cautionary tale. Nope. It started with brilliance. With brains. With a man named B.J. Habibie, a genius who built a foundation of aerospace engineering so solid it made the West nervous. The guy held 46 patents, launched the country's first passenger aircraft, and basically carried Indonesia's aviation dreams on his nerdy, powerful shoulders. For a moment, the sky wasn't the limit, it was the runway. Indonesia had swagger, ambition, and the kind of momentum people write documentaries about. And then, the plane stalled. Not literally, yet, but institutionally. The dream got traded for shortcuts. The system, instead of being maintained, was patched with duct tape and good intentions. And what happens when ambition collides with apathy at 30,000 feet? 2,400 lives lost. Not a typo. That's the real body count. This isn't fear-mongering. It's a reality check with a boarding pass. Poor training. Outdated planes. Maintenance procedures that could barely keep a bicycle safe. Add in tropical weather, and you've got the perfect storm for breaking news banners. Indonesia became that country on the no-fly list, banned from EU and US airspace for over a decade. A nation that once dreamed of space now couldn't legally land in Frankfurt. It's like building a luxury yacht, sailing it out, and then forgetting to put fuel in it. You don't sink because you're incapable. You sink because you stopped checking the engine. And yet, here's the plot twist nobody expects. There's still hope. Because Indonesia isn't just patching holes, it's rebuilding. New oversight. Modern fleets. Tougher safety standards. And while trust takes years to earn back, especially when it's 35,000 feet above sea level, you can feel the shift in the air, pun intended. You ever wonder why we love comeback stories so much? Maybe because deep down, we know brilliance doesn't just disappear, it waits. It pauses. Then it roars back, smarter and scarred. Comment 8 if you believe that this archipelago of ambition still has what it takes to fly, not just safely, but spectacularly. Because when Indonesia really gets back off the ground, you'll want a window seat. 9. Rare and unique species. Let's be real, most of us think we've seen wildlife because we binge Planet Earth or made eye contact with a raccoon once. But Indonesia? It doesn't play that game. This place is not your petting zoo fantasy. It's the last VIP lounge for creatures that straight up said, yeah, we survived extinction. What did you do today? Start with the Komodo dragon, the largest lizard on Earth. It's not a dragon in the fairy tale sense. No, this thing is 3 meters long, weighs more than your gym goals, and can smell blood from 10 kilometers away. Basically, A prehistoric murder sausage with a taste for flesh. And yes, it's real. No CGI. Meanwhile, you're over here worrying about stepping on a Lego barefoot. Try hiking in Komodo habitat. It's the original Jurassic Park minus the fences and insurance. Now let's sting your soul a little. The Javan rhino, one of the rarest mammals alive. There are only around 50 left. That's it. That's not a population, that's a wedding guest list. You've probably got more followers who fake their lives online than actual Javan rhinos walking the earth. And if that doesn't make you flinch, you're the reason the term endangered still needs to exist. Next up, orangutans. They share 97% of their DNA with you. That means evolution looked at them and said, close enough. They're brilliant, emotional, wildly resourceful, and somehow, still more chill than half the people in your group chat. Watching an orangutan use tools while people can't figure out self-checkout? Brutal. But wait, here's the crowd-clearing showstopper. Rafflesia arnoldi. The world's largest flower, and also the smelliest. It literally stinks like rotting meat to attract flies. Because of course it does. This thing doesn't beg for your attention, it assaults your senses and wins awards doing it. Meanwhile, people spray designer fragrance to get attention and still come up short. You ever wonder why the most powerful things in nature don't scream for validation? Because when you're that rare, that wild, and that unapologetically unique, you don't compete. You just exist. Boldly. Weirdly. Gloriously. And Indonesia is home to all of it. Comment 9, if you're finally ready to admit that Indonesia's wildlife isn't just fascinating, it's humbling. Because in a world where everyone's trying to stand out, these creatures remind you, being unforgettable doesn't mean being loud, it means being real. 10. Civet poop coffee and superstitions. You ever scroll past some overpriced aesthetic coffee on Instagram and think, there's no way this is worth $8? Cool. Now imagine paying $1,000 a kilo for coffee that's been digested and excreted by a cat-raccoon hybrid. Welcome to Kopi Luwak, Indonesia's gift to caffeine snobs and people who need their ego roasted along with their beans. Let's just call it what it is. Coffee that's literally been through some stuff. A civet, picture a sassy little jungle ferret, eats the ripest coffee cherries, digests them, and lets nature finish the process. The beans get a special enzymatic treatment in the civet's gut and come out smoother, richer, and way more expensive than your dignity. You're laughing, but don't lie, part of you wants to try it. Not because you're a coffee expert, but because deep down, you're the kind of person who would absolutely say, yeah, this is poop coffee. But it's exclusive. But let's not pretend Indonesia's weird stops at the beverage menu. You ever think your family had strange traditions? Indonesia's over here going full-on spiritual surgical. In Bali, there's a tradition called tooth filing. Not cosmetic. Not dental. Spiritual. 6 upper teeth filed down to symbolically remove 6 human flaws: anger, desire, greed, ignorance, jealousy, and drunkenness. Meanwhile, you're still holding onto a situationship from 2022 and calling it healing. And it gets deeper, literally from birth. In certain regions, babies' feet aren't allowed to touch the ground for 6 months. Not for Instagram aesthetics, not because the floor's dirty, but because evil spirits. Yep. Until that half-birthday hits, those tiny feet are sacred. Floating above ground like the divine cherubs they are. You ever wonder why your life feels chaotic, even when everything's fine? Maybe because you skipped all the grounding rituals and jumped straight into adulthood with nothing but a Starbucks order and a Twitter thread on self-worth. See, these customs may sound extreme to outsiders, but that's only because we've forgotten how to treat life like it matters. We're out here mocking spiritual traditions while meditating to lo-fi beats in $90 athleisure. You call it superstition. They call it identity. And here's the kicker, it works. Not the poop coffee or tooth filing specifically, but the intention behind it. The meaning. The ritual. The pause. The part where life isn't just something you survive, but something you honor, even if it smells like a civet's digestive opinion on caffeine. Comment 10 if you try civet coffee, or at least admit this culture's got more spiritual backbone than your entire vision board. Because in a world addicted to speed, maybe it's the slow, strange, sacred things that keep us human. 11. Jakarta is sinking. You ever feel like you're drowning, but instead of addressing the issue, you just light a candle and hope for the best? Welcome to Jakarta, a city literally sinking into the sea while millions pretend it's just a little water problem. Let's rip the bandage off. Jakarta is going down, not figuratively, geologically. It's sinking at 25 centimeters per year. That's not climate change someday. That's climate change knocking on the door with a crowbar. Over 40% of Jakarta is already below sea level. Below. Not at risk. Not soon. It's already losing the fight, and no, sandbags won't fix this. So what's the plan? Build bigger walls? Drain the ocean? Manifest better drainage with good vibes? Nope. Indonesia said, you know what? Let's just make a new city. Enter Nusantara, the green tech-heavy, low-emission, high-ambition brainchild being built from scratch on the island of Borneo. No pollution, no gridlock, no crumbling foundation. Just pure reset button energy. You ever wonder why people move cities when they break up? Jakarta and Indonesia are doing that, but with 11 million people and centuries of political baggage. The city's literally collapsing under its own weight, too many people, too much groundwater sucked up like it's a Capri Sun, and sea levels creeping up like overdue consequences. Here's your flinch moment. People in Jakarta experience flooding even on sunny days. Read that again. It's not raining. It's not storming. The sea just comes in anyway. It's like Mother Nature saying, "You didn't listen? Cool. I'm coming to work now." So Indonesia's not just building a new capital, it's trying to build a future that works. And Nusantara isn't some utopian daydream with drone deliveries and flying cars. It's a survival strategy with clean air, eco-design, and urban planning that doesn't require scuba gear. The contrast couldn't be louder. Jakarta is gasping. Nusantara is breathing. You ever realize too late that something isn't fixable? That's Jakarta. But instead of dragging the corpse, Indonesia is saying, let's evolve. It's bold. It's messy. But it's real. Comment 11 if you think Nusantara isn't just a new city, it's the kind of radical move the rest of the world wishes it had the guts to make. Because sometimes progress isn't fixing the old, it's walking away before the tide takes everything. 12. Transportation progress. Let's talk about traffic, not the cute kind where you slow down for ducks, but the kind that slowly robs you of your will to live. If you've ever sat in a car for 2 hours just to move 5 blocks, congratulations, you've had a taste of Jakarta before the glow-up. Here's a stat to ruin your afternoon. At one point, Jakarta's traffic was so bad, people were estimated to lose 4 years of their lives just sitting in it. 4 years. You could have learned a language, built a business, or gone through 2 existential crises, and instead, you just aged in gridlock. You ever feel like your life's on pause? Imagine pressing that button every single day. With horns blaring, bikes zigzagging like they're dodging death, and drivers so fed up they start making eye contact with God. That was Jakarta. It wasn't just traffic. It was spiritual warfare on wheels. But here's the twist. Indonesia didn't just complain about it, they did something insane. They actually fixed it. Enter the BRT system, bus rapid transit. Sounds boring? Too bad. Jakarta now has the largest BRT system on the planet. Over 250 kilometers of dedicated lanes, over 1 million passengers daily. While other cities are still debating if buses are cool, Jakarta's over here treating public transit like the Marvel Universe, expanding it faster than anyone can keep up. And it doesn't stop there. Jakarta's adding subways and LRT networks like it's trying to speed-run urban development. You know what that's called? Deciding not to drown in your own excuses. The city that once turned your commute into a hostage situation is now quietly becoming a global model for urban transformation. You ever wonder why people romanticize hustle culture, but never question why they're hustling in bumper-to-bumper misery? Because somewhere along the way, we normalized stress as proof of progress. Jakarta said, nah, let's build something that doesn't suck. And yeah, it's still chaotic. Still humid. Still wild. But now, you can actually move. And movement, real physical forward motion, is the thing most cities forgot was possible. Here's your metaphor that slaps too close to home. Jakarta used to be a treadmill. You were sweating, panting, going nowhere. Now, it's finally a road. Not perfect. But at least it goes somewhere. And if that doesn't impress you, maybe you've been sitting in your own metaphorical traffic for too long. Comment 12 if you love cities that fix problems instead of branding them as character. Because Jakarta just proved, when you stop waiting for change and build it, the impossible becomes your morning commute. 13. Delicious dishes. You ever eat something so good it makes you question your entire relationship? Like, wait, this rice understands me better than my ex ever did? Yeah. Welcome to Indonesian cuisine, where every bite tastes like it's been simmering for centuries and every dish makes your current meal feel like an apology. Let's start with the one that humbles every takeout box on earth, nasi goreng. It's fried rice, but not that sad clumpy mess you microwaved at 2 a.m. This stuff is Indonesia's national soul food. Sweet soy sauce, garlic, chili, shallots, all wok-tossed like they're in a smoky dance battle. Throw in eggs, chicken, shrimp, maybe beef if you're feeling cocky. And it's always served with crunchy prawn crackers because texture matters, Karen. Nasi goreng isn't just a meal. It's a warm, edible therapy session. A hug from your taste buds after the world gaslights you with quinoa and overpriced salad jars. But wait, it gets darker, deeper, and way more delicious. Rendang. This one isn't food. It's a commitment. A slow-cooked beef stew so rich, CNN crowned it the best dish in the world. Yeah, the world. Let that sink in while your local cafe still tries to convince you their turkey panini is elevated. Rendang simmers for hours. We're talking coconut milk, lemongrass, turmeric, garlic, ginger, and chili, all melting into meat that falls apart with the emotional drama of a season finale. It's not just tender. It's spiritually obedient. You don't eat rendang. You submit to it. And then there's satay. Skewered meat marinated in flavor, grilled over open flames, then drowned in a peanut sauce so thick it should have its own fan base. Chicken, beef, lamb, doesn't matter. If it fits on a stick and plays well with fire, it's getting sautéed. The smell alone? Illegal levels of seduction. It lingers in the streets like your last situationship, messy, addictive, and impossible to ignore. But unlike your ex, sauté won't ghost you after 3 bites. You ever wonder why food makes us feel more at home than most people do? Maybe because great dishes don't perform. They don't lie. They don't ask you to change. They just show up, hot, honest, and unapologetically good. Comment 13 if your mouth's already planning its escape to Indonesia. Because in a world full of overhyped diets and culinary identity crises, this food doesn't chase trends, it sets the standard. 1 bite at a time. 14. Festivals. Let's be honest, most of your idea of culture is standing in front of a temple for 12 seconds while pretending your life has depth. But Indonesia? It doesn't give you the option to fake it. The festivals here don't just entertain you, they unravel you. Because here's what they won't tell you on the travel blogs. Indonesia doesn't throw parties. It throws rituals in disguise, raw, sacred, explosive, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the point while busy filming B-roll for your healing trip montage. Let's start with Nyepi, Bali's day of silence. 1 day. No lights. No talking. No traveling. No phones. No TikToks. Just you. Sitting with your thoughts. Horrifying, I know. It's a spiritual reboot, where the entire island shuts down to purge chaos and invite balance. You ever wonder why your soul feels heavy even when your to-do list is empty? It's because silence isn't punishment, it's medicine. And Nyepi serves it up with 0 distractions and no chance to multitask healing. Then there's the Jember Fashion Carnival. Not your recycled Halloween fits or desperate Met Gala knockoffs. This is runway on steroids, parading through streets like a Technicolor fever dream. Wingspans wider than your ambition, headpieces taller than your rent. This isn't fashion for attention. This is fashion for expression. And the people? Not models. Just locals walking like legends. It's a reminder that sometimes, you don't need permission to be bold. You just need feathers, fabric, and 0 concern for practicality. Now let's row into Bidar boat race. 70 men in a single dragon-like canoe, slamming paddles in rhythm like their ancestors are watching. Because they are. This isn't some lazy summer float. This is warfare dressed as tradition. The crowd screams, the boats slice through the river like it owes them something, and you realize. We turned competition into content. They turned it into legacy. Here's the gut punch. While the rest of the world is building festivals for brand deals and hashtags, Indonesia's building them for the soul. These celebrations aren't performances, they're living proof that tradition doesn't have to be dusty. It can dance. It can roar. It can pause the entire island just to breathe. Comment 14 if you want more than a vacation. If you want to witness a culture that doesn't just show up, it shakes you awake. Because Indonesia doesn't care if you're ready. Its festivals will change you anyway. 15. Cost of living. You ever look at your monthly expenses and think, wow, I'm paying this much just to exist? Rent that eats your soul. Groceries that judge your cart. And don't even start on the $6 coffee you bought out of emotional instability. Here's the part that stings. You're not living, you're leaking money. And the worst part? You've convinced yourself it's normal. That somehow, barely surviving on $3,500 a month is just part of the grind. Now let's hit you with a slap of tropical reality. Indonesia exists. And it's not just beaches and coconuts. It's one of the few places on Earth where you can breathe, eat well, and still have money left over to actually enjoy life. Let's break it down like your therapist should have done for your spending habits. Rent? $150 to $700 per month. That's not a typo. That's a fully livable apartment, possibly with a view, not a shoebox where your knees hit the wall when you turn over in bed. Groceries? $150 to $250 per month. That's with fresh fruit, real rice, and enough spices to make your bland cooking finally taste like you've got emotional depth. Eating out? $1 to $3 per meal. That's not fast food regret, that's legit meals that taste like your grandma cared. Because in Indonesia, flavor doesn't cost your future. Gym? $15 to $40 per month. Yes, you can finally stop pretending you don't have time, and admit you just didn't want to pay $120 to run in place surrounded by mirrors and judgment. Total monthly cost? $700 to $1,400. That's everything. Rent, food, fitness, comfort, the works. Meanwhile, you're out here spending that just to cry into your overpriced takeout 3 nights a week. You ever wonder why digital nomads, early retirees, and people who figured it out are all moving to Southeast Asia? It's not because they like sweating. It's because they realized the West sold them a dream wrapped in burnout and called it success. Living in Indonesia doesn't mean giving up luxury, it means redefining it. Waking up without debt anxiety? Luxury. Eating 3 meals a day without calculating your bank app afterward? Luxury. Having time to think, walk, breathe, nap? That's the stuff money should buy. Living in a high-cost country is like having emotional baggage you refuse to check. You drag it through every decision, every plan, every dream, justifying the weight because everyone else is carrying it too. But what if you didn't have to? Comment 15 if you're tired of the overpriced hamster wheel and finally want to live somewhere that doesn't charge you a subscription fee for peace of mind. Because Indonesia isn't cheap, it's smart. And you deserve better than surviving expensively. You deserve to live. So which truth about Indonesia slapped you awake? Or did we miss one that deserves the spotlight? Drop it in the comments. Raw takes only, no sugarcoating. If this hit your wanderlust nerve, challenged your comfort zone, or made you question why you're still paying $3,000 a month to hate your life, do the smart thing. Hit like, smash subscribe, and ring that bell so you never miss another brutally honest breakdown. Until next time, stay loud, stay curious, and for the love of all things real, never settle for basic. The information is for reference only, so please do your own research before making any decisions.